Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our chat today. I'm really excited to have our panelists that I've known for years, and it's a very exciting topic. So I'll dive right in. Quick intros. I'm Vanessa Larco. I'm a partner at NEA. I'm an investor in early stage startups. I have May Habib here. She's co-founder and CEO of Writer. Dan, co-founder and CEO of Limitless AI, and Bella Liu, CEO and co-founder at Orby AI. So I'm going to quickly run through the state of generative AI. These are Q2 numbers. I grabbed them from CB Insights, which I scour all the time. As you can imagine, deal count has gone up. So investment in AI and generative AI continues to increase quarter over quarter with no signs of slowing down. The average deal size and median deal size are up as well. So companies are raising quite a bit of capital. We call them their war chests, are getting replenished frequently. And the interest in generative AI is holding strong. So this is from Google Trends search terms, right? There was a huge increase in generative AI, and it's holding. It's not like it's a fad that has gone past us. So what this is telling us is that the space is continuing to grow, more and more crowded every day, and it has no signs of slowing down. And venture capital has no signs of slowing down in investments in this category either. And as customers are trying to figure out which of these solutions are right for them, what should they buy, what should they try, and there's more startups than ever. So it's gotten rather noisy, rather crowded. I think we're all seeing that. We're all feeling that. So that's why we think it's more important than ever to figure out how to cut through the noise and get the solution to your customer that they need. So that's why I have this incredible panel. And they'll go through their products and what they do. But the most interesting thing about the people on the stage is that they've taken very different approaches to reaching their customer and how they go to market. And they have very strong opinions on this topic, so I'm excited to jump right in. So May, will you tell us a little bit about Writer?
Yeah, absolutely. So Writer is a full stack generative AI company, and we combine LLMs with the microservices that enterprises need to build really bespoke, custom AI apps, agents, workflows. We're based here in San Francisco. We're almost 300 people across SF, New York, and London.
Yeah. And Dan, tell us a little bit about Limitless AI. You're wearing it too.
I am, yeah. So Limitless is a personalized AI powered by everything you've seen, said, or heard. It's a web app, a Mac app, a Windows app, and a wearable. So this is the first time out in public I'm wearing the Limitless pendant. And it captures what you say and what you hear and makes it useful. So for example, if I just say naturally through my conversation, I'm so grateful to be here on this panel. Later today on my app, it'll say, to do, send Vanessa a thank you for being so grateful for being on this panel. So it takes things that you were otherwise going to do naturally. Anytime you imagine taking out a piece of paper and a pen, instead of doing that, you can now just speak. And that ability to sort of augment human intelligence with artificial intelligence is really what we're trying to focus on. We don't want to replace humans, we want to augment humans. And we think wearing a pendant and using the apps will give you that feeling of having a superpower.
Yeah. And then, Bella, will you tell us a little bit about Orby?
Yes. So at Orby, we want to use AI to basically automate all the processes that you don't want to do, and we can enable enterprise efficiencies at scale. And so behind the scene, we build our own foundation model that can essentially understand all the actions you do on the screen, like your clicks, your type. You go to a website, you make a decision, and then we generate the action that can automate the tasks. So basically, like we sell to large enterprise type of customers, and the initial use cases are mostly in finance and accounting. As an example, we help one of the largest Fortune 500 customers to automate their finance, payment, reconciliation processes, saving them millions of dollars and reducing critical errors. So essentially at Orby, we want to automate all the mundane and repetitive work that you don't want to do, so you can focus on enjoying your work and creating more value.
It's a common trend across the three of you, but in very different ways. So I want to talk through the ideal customer profile, because with technology that's so powerful and so flexible that can address so many use cases, where did you start? Who was your first ideal customer, and how did you determine who that should be? May, thanks for
Sure. It's definitely changed for us over time. Our ideal customer today is a Global 2000 company, and our buyer is the CIO. And that was not the case even 18 months ago. We transitioned from product to platform, and we transitioned then from a line of business VP or even senior director being our buyer to a C-suite leader buying a platform for use across multiple departments. So it's definitely evolved, and it's evolved as our platform and capabilities have widened and deepened. And I would say in generative AI, it's also matched the moment. The generative AI budgets in the Global 2000 are now squarely in the CIO's org, even when they serve other departments.
Yep. Dan, I think that's been also an interesting exercise.
Yeah, for us, I've had a lot of failed startups, and they all have one theme, which is trying to build for somebody else. I'm just not good at building products that I wouldn't want to use every day. So the original thesis for what we're building at Limitless started with, what's the product I wish we had? And it goes all the way back to, in my 20s, I started to lose my hearing. And when I turned 30, I tried a hearing aid, and it was magical. It felt like gaining a superpower. To lose a sense and gain it back again is this magical feeling. And ever since then, we've been on this hunt for ways that technology can augment human capabilities and give us that same feeling. So it starts with that, which is like that is the core problem. And the people for whom that is the most, that resonates the most, we describe as context switchers. They are more pirates than Navy. They're usually in back-to-back meetings. They seek forgiveness, not permission. And so our product, while it's adopted by a lot of people who are busy and they're probably expensing it through their company, it's actually much more bottoms up, much more of an individual user at a company. Because what we do is weird. It's different. It's new. And you kind of need to be the kind of person who says, boy, it's more important to me to be productive and at home for dinner with my kids at 5 o'clock every night. And if a tool like a pendant can help me do that, then I'm willing to sort of overcome the newness and maybe the social awkwardness that might come from that kind of a product. So that's our ideal customer profile. It's more pirates than Navy and people who are really busy.
Yep. And Bella, yours was also like you decided to start and focus on the finance use case, but it could have been any use case.
Yeah, so exactly. And it's like very interesting. This is applicable really to everyone. But then we quickly just like find this very natural pull from very large enterprise customers because they have the most pain with efficiency, essentially. So we decided to focus on large enterprise customers. And then quickly we discovered that, okay, finance and accounting is really the sweet spot. They have like 60% of the processes that are repetitive and transactional that should be automated. And also they're very complex and they cannot be easily automated with existing rules-based type of technologies. Have to use AI. And also one interesting discovery is that finance and accounting teams, they seem to be a little bit more relaxed in terms of like budget constraints in a way. Mm-hmm. So we decided to double down on that segment.
Turns out when you own the budget, you can be a little more flexible with the budget. Surprising. So when it comes to selling the product, so we talked through your buyer, how do you sell to them, right? How do you get to them? How do you pitch to them? What does that look like? And is it different, you think, with generative AI, or is it the same playbook for that buyer, no matter what you are?
It's a whole like other level that you got to clear. It is so noisy, way harder, because it's everything, everywhere, all at once. If you are selling AI to the CIO right now, get in line, right? You're the 30th pitch that week. And so the only way to stand out is to nail their exact problem that they are struggling with today. So take a part of our product called Knowledge Graph. This is graph-based drag that connects into an assistant that the CIO might want HR to be able to build for employees. The ability for us to go in and actually, literally by like minute 3, show them the types of questions that had been failing inside of their DIY application and the ones we're getting right. Like, you need that light bulb to go off in literally 3 minutes, or they're going to be checking their phone or doing something else. And so for us, we call it demo domination. We literally have a whole internal enablement play on this. And if you are pitching a Fortune 150 insurance company that does property and casualty, Like you are literally showing a demo for how a claim adjudicator's day would change with Writer. It is so specific. Our reps will call people who used to work in ops at a call center to pitch to an SVP of ops at a call center. So it's just so specific. The solution that you are selling, they need to leave that call and say, I want this right now. And with generative AI, it's software that builds software, essentially. And so you just can't go in there with like, I've got a cool widget, or I've got like an enterprise generative AI platform. Like there are 30 companies saying that.
That's really helpful.
Yeah, did you say demo domination?
Domination.
Yeah, I love that.
I like that too.
Yeah,
we give everybody wristbands, headbands, like it's the whole thing.
Yeah,
Right.
I totally agree with that. And I think with generative AI, it is really important to show, not tell. A good example of one thing that we did just yesterday, actually, we posted a video of me wearing the pendant, I'm speaking, and I happen to have an identical twin brother. And so he stood next to me, and he started speaking, and it was able to tell the difference between our voices.
Awesome.
And that might seem like, oh, cool tech, well, why does that matter? Well, understanding who says what is really important. It's the context of everything you've said and heard that really makes a big difference. When I say I'm going to do something, that's a to-do list. When somebody else says that they're going to do something, that's just interesting. And so I think being able to do things like that, like speaker attribution, be able to beat the twin test, those are the kinds of demos and magical moments that I think really open people's imagination. I've learned that when you're close to the technology, it's really hard to remember that most of the world doesn't know what's possible. Like they don't know what to type into an empty chat box when you can chat with your large language model. And so you really need to walk them to the oasis in the desert because there's a lot of hype out there. And unless you can actually show as opposed to tell, I think it's hard to cut through.
Yeah. I think I agree with for sure, demo isn't magic. One of the hurdles for us in the early days is also every customer wants to do a POC. That's 100% basically. But then what we found is that as you start to have more success cases, you have more references, and then that starts to get much better. So I think my recommendation is also try to get references early on, and then that will significantly help you later.
Yeah, it sounds like the specificity is super important. That's the trend I'm seeing where you're I need the ops person to sell to the ops person because they speak the language. And in Bella's case, is I need my reference that is VP of Finance to talk to this VP of Finance and speak their language about how this actually helps. Mm-hmm. But it's the specificity, I think, that's key. And the other really interesting thing here is Writer and Orby follow a tops-down sales model where Limitless follows a bottoms-up sales model. And I hear from different people all the time, tops down is way easier for generative AI. And then I hear from others, bottoms up is way easier with generative AI. And so I guess I pose it to the panel, is the grass greener on the other side? Or are you really glad you're tops down? Or are you really glad you're bottoms up?
It's a sandwich. Right now, the terrain changes so quickly. Most people don't feel empowered to make decisions bottoms up in the enterprise on what to use or who to bring in. So it is a huge relief for everybody, for the leader, the head of AI, the head of the AI Center of Excellence, et cetera, whoever's in charge to be try this. Then when you're in there, the love has to come bottoms up. So it's a sandwich. You get in top down, but then you inspire and win bottoms up.
Dan, do you miss the top-down days?
Well, there are days I miss the top-down days. So my last company was Optimizely, which started as a bottoms-up sort of, we described them as mere marketing mortals, people in the organization who just wanted to prove the value of marketing, and they used A/B testing to do that. And eventually we grew into more of a tops-down traditional enterprise model. So I saw that emerge. And there are a lot of benefits to that. I think for the product we're building, we were kind of forced into the model we're in, which I like, because ultimately, people don't want to wear, if they're going to wear basically a Bluetooth microphone everywhere they go, they don't want to be, we don't want any perception that this is some kind of surveillance tool by your employer, by the government. And so just by virtue of the product that we're building, it really needs to be a decision that the person wearing it needs to make. And so that's why I think, and I'm very happy. I do think it's kind of hard mode because you can't just pick up a phone and call people. There's just too many people to call. But when it works and it resonates, you do get this massive audience. There's 7 billion people on this planet who can independently make the decision to purchase what we build. So I do think it's harder maybe initially, but as we're seeing, hopefully over time, it gets easier if we're able to do the pure things that make the product on its own sell without having to pick up the phone.
Yeah. It's very interesting for us. It's actually not a choice that we cannot go bottoms up. It has to be a top-down motion because we're basically used to automate some of the most mission-critical type of enterprise processes. So that means you have to go through some of the security hurdles. It has to be installed by large teams to automate like your finance accounting processes. So we basically top-down from the beginning. But I think one thing that is really important for us really to keep in mind is that the product needs to be really easy to use. So it should be like as easy as like bottoms up. If I just give it to a day-to-day user to an content, can they just like install it from day one? So that's a principle we really keep in mind. Even the whole sales motion is top-down.
Yep, makes sense. So, but you guys have all alluded to this. Like, it's crowded. It's moving quickly. People don't feel empowered to bring in generative AI apps because they're changing so frequently. How closely do you monitor the landscape and the competition? Especially, Dan, I feel like you've had a lot of thoughts on this on Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, the competition, it's really, it would be a mistake to over-index on competition. I've learned, I think my first startup, I just sort of wanted something to work. And I didn't really think much about competition. I didn't think about kind of the 4D chess of what happens if we succeed. And now I've kind of come to the acceptance that either what you're doing is a good idea or a bad idea. If it's a bad idea, it'll fail. If it's a good idea, it's a question of when, not if some big tech company is going to come in and compete with you. For another product we built, we had Microsoft come in and do sort of a shameless imitation of it. And that, that in itself, I kind of anticipated it, but you have to kind of build a business with a moat that knows that that's a question of when, not if. And so I think I was more naive probably my first time around. Now I just recognize like, hey, what are the things that fundamentally are, if everyone knew what I knew, if they had our full strategy doc, if they had access to everything we know, what could still endure in a world where if it's a good idea and there's lots of hype and lots of money, these big tech companies are going to try to eat your lunch. So that's the approach I've taken.
Did you get a lot of calls when that Microsoft announcement came out?
I got a couple. I think a lot of the people who had been following me along for a while realized, okay, this is kind of a question, is inevitable. The beautiful thing about that, though, is it really did validate what we were doing because, we were kind of crazy. Like, we're out there trying to do a brand new thing in a brand new market, and to have a company like Microsoft so shamelessly just take that thing, and a year and a half later build what we had was, in the moment, I'll be honest, it doesn't feel great because you're like, oh my gosh, is this the end? But after a while, you start to sit back and realize, okay, in a world where the vast majority of the world does not know what you do or why they should care, this is only going to build a market. And ultimately, the ideal thing you want, which is I hope the dynamic we have, is you have a lot of competitors who talk the talk, but very few who walk the walk. Because they're building the market, and then all you have to do is deliver. You don't have to spend a ton of money sponsoring SaaStr. They're going out there like, oh, sorry, I shouldn't have said that. They're going out there telling, evangelizing for the idea, for the problem, getting people excited, and then people try the product, like, oh boy, this is a bummer. I really wish the database was encrypted or whatever. They go out looking, and you just happen to be the product in the right place. So I'd rather be in a competitive market than in a market nobody cares about.
Well, it's good that Microsoft did mess up that launch.
That did help. That did help. Yeah,
after they opened the market, they were like, just kidding, we messed this up. We'll be back in a year or two with a real product. May, I mean, you're a platform that's like bullseye target for these big incumbents. Do you worry more about the incumbents or the upstarts that are copying you that are venture funded?
Yeah, and we actually just got our very first carbon copycat. I'm like, milestone, everybody. This is awesome, wonderful. But seriously, competition's amazing, right? It puts a startup in the hot seats exactly where you want to be, and the big guys are creating the market for you. So it is absolutely what you want to be doing. For us, the way that we have thought about our strategy and how we stay competitive over time, the story of Writer is the story of the transformer. And as the capabilities of transformers have increased, and we're on the precipice of this next big step function increase, I think on par with stripping out the decoder and kind of your GPT-2 to GPT-3 transition, our ability to deliver value on top of those capabilities increasing is incredibly differentiated to our customers. And our customers who have been with us we just had our third renewal. Intuit was our very first enterprise customer. And that is a source of enduring competitive advantage. I don't talk about moats anymore because moats can be overcome, especially if you're Microsoft and one day you will be selling salmon in the North Atlantic Ocean, right? This is an incredibly ambitious company. focus is your friend, and being able to really take the customer, right, the vendor relationship for them is their ticket to innovation, and really being able to show everybody just what your history has been, what your trajectory has been, delivering on that. Like every week of the sales cycle, there's new shit in the product, right? And that is what we can do better than the hyperscalers, is just move with extreme focus and speed, and stay really close to the customer. They're building for the lowest common denominator. And so it's crowded. I wouldn't actually say generative AI is that competitive. Honestly, there's so much space, there's so much to do, there's a lot of choice, and it's about prioritization, right? So how can you help your customer prioritize their generative AI strategy? That's what allows them to then figure out what products to buy. But as you think about all the different things you can sell in generative AI, it's you and Microsoft, which means it's you and nobody.
Yeah. I vividly remember our call, I think it was maybe 2020 or 2021, like when the transition from GPT-2 to GPT-3, and you're like, this is our moment. I'm starting this company. I know this space. I know the buyer backwards and forwards. And it's been amazing to see you capitalize on those unique insights you had about the buyer, about the companies, and how they work with strings. Like your first thesis was around string management. So it's been incredible to watch, May. Great. And Bella, tell us a little bit about how you think about the competitive, because you're an earlier stage startup, you just raised, and so how do you think about the competition? Do you even think about the competition?
Yeah, of course. I think for us, I actually think about competition both for right now, like the short term, when we think about just going to customer, what is the competitive landscape, how do we pitch, what's the competitive value proposition, et cetera. But we also think about it as a company, what's the long-term moat. I actually think about the long-term moat as well. That's why we're building the foundation model in-house, because we believe that this will really differentiate us in the long term. And because of this full stack, we'll continue to iterate to build a flywheel, et cetera. So, but I don't really think about it every day, because a lot of times it's really noise. So it's really about this framework, and you have the hypothesis, and you just constantly just validate. Every few months, you look at the landscape. Is this still the same? Is there anything really completely different? And interesting is not like completely different in a way. And it's like adding new players, but the trend generally is similar in a way. But one thing that I do want to us all think about is like, I realize startup is really competitive in terms of speed. So one thing I told the team is like, we have to execute really, really fast, because everyone is moving extremely, extremely fast. Yeah.
Yep. So moving on to market positioning. In a lot of the times, people are going to Google you. They're going to look you up and see, what is this about? How much time, I guess, have you spent figuring out where you position yourself in the market? Do you compare against an incumbent? Do you create a net new category? Or do you just iterate on the message that you've heard from customers? Like, how do you think about product positioning?
Yeah, all the time. We have a customer advisory board and a growth advisory board. They each meet quarterly, and we like to kick off actually with product marketing, taking our customers and advisors through and just getting like those quick reactions. I'm constantly testing new slides, new messaging, product demos. Our PMM team like half hates me half the time, because like I see something from them in product and I'm literally pitching it 5 minutes later. Oh, I just did that on the way here. Because you want to get market feedback as absolutely quickly as possible. And for us, what we've landed on is, and this is iterative, but it's time to value. And time to value has been, that's been durable for us. That hasn't changed that much in the last 6 months, I would say. The billboards now in SF say ROI for AI, right? And the ability to really help your team operate and cascade down from what you want the brand to stand for. And for us, our vision is to empower people and transform work. And by transform, we mean it's utterly unrecognizable, right? What your teams are doing 2 years, 3 years after Writer, and Accenture tells us that, L'Oreal tells us that, United Healthcare tells us that, and it's so validating. And so, we've got this brand that's based on the human experience at work, which means like the emoji robots are fucking banned, right? Like you put that in your LinkedIn title, you work at Writer, emoji of a robot, like our comms team and our marketing team will be after you, right? Like that's not who we are. The human beings in our marketing are not stock, right? We made that decision about 6 months ago. And so it is about putting that human at the center of the AI conversation and empowering them to help them create a different kind of day. And you guys, I think your companies are doing really similar types of things to elevate human potential with generative AI, but those are the kinds of things that help our brand differentiate from the Microsoft, right? And so you're in there with a really compelling product and a vision that they see reinforced every time they interact with your company, which means you got to be really crisp. And I do think it comes from the founders, how you're differentiated and what that position is going to be, because that's got to be something that is really consistent in the way you show up and the way that your prospects see you show up.
Yep. Yeah, Dan, I think you've iterated on this a bunch.
Yeah, I think it starts with, I agree with everything you said, but I think it really does start with who you're trying to go after and empathizing with them, thinking about the world through their eyes, and what is the kind of a position or messaging that will really cut through and resonate with them. If you have this sort of bland sense of who you're going after, you kind of make an average best message that doesn't really resonate. And I'm a fan of this book, Play Bigger, that talks about how buyers today make decisions around buying categories, not buying products. They want to buy a category. They want to buy a thing in a category. And if you can be thought of as the category king, the leader in that category, that's the little part of somebody's brain you want to own. And that's how I think of market positioning. It's like, what's the tiny little part of their brain when they think of personalized AI? What's the thing they think about? So that's how I think broadly around market positioning. And the worst thing you can do is sort of be the average best and sort of take somebody else and parrot it, because people kind of pay attention. I've been very, I get a lot of critical feedback on Twitter, on X, and like if you're too overhyped and you're sort of saying too many buzzwords, it has such a big counter effect in this market where people want to cut through the noise. They want to see something that's real, and goes back to my point around a demo. So I think that's important to recognize, is there are some kind of third rails around market positioning where it may be precisely right but perfectly wrong. Like you said all the buzzwords, but like overall it kind of emotionally doesn't land. So that would be my advice, is to empathize with the user and find something that emotionally resonates, and try to own the category around that.
Yeah, I think that for us, we did have quite a bit of challenges with marketing positioning. Vanessa knows really well. So Vanessa is our investor from the beginning, and because we're in this category, we tackle the problem of automation. So there's this traditional category of RPA that people are familiar with, but it's essentially based on rules. And we don't want to be in that category. We're not a better RPA. But we're not exactly generative AI in a way that, because in a lot of people's mind, generative AI is more about generative. And while we're really in this actions place, we're generating actions instead of generating chat or emails, etc. So it was really hard to position us at that time. So we basically have to create a new category. But we decided that, hey, this is different. We have to create a new category. And so we landed on this position, generative process automation. And it was very challenging because when you go to Gartner and Forrester, there's no such category. You have to educate everyone from scratch, including customers as well. But I think it's in a way that customers actually resonate with this concept. It's something that they somehow familiar, but they also understand this concept of generative. So it's a constant iterative process, but it's a lot of effort to create a new category. And it's also a risk in some way that we discuss with our investors as well, because it requires a lot of effort for a startup to create a new category.
It's expensive to educate a market.
Very expensive.
I think that what I'm seeing is the fastest growing startups are the ones that are resonating and succeeding. They want to take budget from an existing solution, but they don't want to be compared to that because it's not that category, it's a new category. And it's a fine line of, we want the budget from RPA, or we want your budget from XYZ, but we're not that. We're actually something different and better, and it's a better way of working than what you've been doing traditionally. And even as an investor, when I look at startups, I don't want a we're like Salesforce, but generative AI native, or we're like Workday, but generative AI native. Like they're doing a great job shoving generative AI into those apps. I want a net entirely new category, and that's what gets me excited about this wave. That's why you see a ton of venture dollars pouring into this wave, because we do believe the way people work will change, and there's all these markets and categories are up for disruption, the categories themselves. And so it's great to hear from you all, because you're creating new categories, entirely new categories. It's just hard to educate and position and explain the categories, but that focus on the customer, I think, is critical. Okay, so I'm going to shoot into a quick lightning round. So one-word answers, if possible. SaaS pricing, is it going to be seat-based, consumption-based, or outcome-based?
All three.
What? Cheating.
Value.
Oh, I don't know if everyone's making up words. All right, Bella.
Outcome.
Outcome-based? Okay. Sorry, I have them in my notes. What are the biggest headwinds to mass AI adoption?
Literacy.
Fear.
User experience.
Okay. Should AI be regulated?
A yes or no to that? I guess no.
Yee.
No.
No.
Yes for trust.
For trust, to build trust. Okay, to overcome the fear. I think like somewhere in the realm of potential regulation, but okay, fine. Favorite AI app that's not your product?
I love Descript.
Ooh, okay.
ChatGPT.
Oh, okay.
That's true.
It's true, I didn't get it.
I actually really like your product because every founder needs superpower.
I do see a lot of founders excited. Like everyone I talk to, including my mom, who's like, I want a Limitless pendant. She's like founder CEO. Great. Well, I want to briefly touch on some of the takeaways I've learned from this session. I love the demo domination. I think like showing is better than telling people. I think they need to see how this applies to them, to their job, to the task at hand, to really believe it. Being very specific with your buyer. If you want to cut through the noise, you can't use froofy language or all the buzz terms. You need to talk to them in the language, using the terminology that they expect, and empathize, deeply empathize with the problems that they're facing. And then the other thing I found compelling was all of you are really focused on the human aspect of it. I haven't heard anyone here say, let's replace the humans, or we don't need people, this is all going to run, it's like Terminator style. Like everybody here is like, actually focus on the human, talk about the human, and superpower the human, and that seems to be what's resonating with buyers and users. Nobody wants to feel dispensable, and focusing your product around that. So hopefully you took away more than that, but it's been an absolute pleasure to be on stage with the three of you.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.